have what we all are familiar with, Abraham, who was born in the 1947th year. He was called by God in the 2022nd year, about the age of 75. Okay? So we have from Adam 2,022 years of history, and from a biblical standpoint, from the time that God created marriage, it stayed the same. All right? Now, turn in your Bibles to Genesis chapter 12, and I'm going to show you this biblically. Genesis chapter 12, starting in verse 10. All right? Now, this is what it says. And some of your Bibles have a title like Abraham in Egypt, or Abraham goes to Egypt, or Abram, this is before God changed his name to Abraham. Abram in Egypt. It says, verse 10. Now, there was a famine in the land, and Abram went down to Egypt to live there for a while because the famine was severe. As he was about to enter Egypt, he said to his wife Sarai, "I know what a beautiful woman you are." Okay, now stop right there, because that's kind of key. Because a lot of, the family stress and pressure we're going into the holidays, and I'm not trying to just say this to say this, but really a lot of stuff can be avoided if we would just encourage each other once in a while. Last week we talked about just go home and talk to your family, and if all you're talking about are the serious things and the stresses, that needs to be discussed. But sometimes just some joyful encouragement, hey, honey, you look good, or oh, thank you so much for whatever your spouse did. Just some positive reinforcement goes a long way. But don't do it before you do something stupid like this, okay? Because what he's about to do is really stupid. Okay, so he says, "What a beautiful woman you are." Then he says, "When the Egyptians see you, they will say, 'This is his wife.' Then they will kill me, but will let you live. Say you are my sister, so that I will be treated well for your sake, and my life will be spared because of you." Basically, this is what happens, right? They broke the marital bond because they're supposed to be lockstep connected. Hey, this is us walking together in unison, in unity as a marital unit, okay? But Abraham broke it because he said, "You are like stunningly beautiful, but in order to preserve myself, not the marital unit, myself, when people see you and say how good looking you are, you need to say you're my sister in case they want to hit on you so they don't have to get rid of me." Okay? Now, Sarai broke the marital bond by saying yes. This is one of those times, going back to last week, where a little discussion should have been taking place, and I don't get it. You're basically, the word didn't exist back then, but you're pimping me out. That's what he was doing. This is, to put this in today's standard. How many guys, anyone ever been to D.C.? Okay, all right. This was for you married couples. And we talked about this is exactly we talked about it when we were doing the Bible study. If you and your spouse were to go down to D.C., and then some of the congressional aides, you're going through the tourist thing, you're checking out the monument, you're checking out the White House, some of the congressional aides see you and your spouse, and they look at your spouse and say, "Wow, she's hot. Congressman so-and-so would love to hook up with her." Now, you have to understand, at the time she was 65, okay? At 65 years of age, he not only looked at her and said she's beautiful, but he knew that other men would look at her and say she is hot. So you're in D.C. with your spouse, a congressional aide looks and says, "Wow, his wife is hot." They contact the congressman. The congressman says, "Oh, she is hot, but I can't hook up with her because of him." And so this is what happens. Drop down to verse 17. The rest of verse 16. Or 15. "And when the Pharaoh's officials saw her, they praised her to Pharaoh, and she was taken into his palace. He treated Abraham well for her sake, and Abram acquired sheep and cattle, male and female donkeys, men servants, and maid servants and camels." In other words, the congressman, he looks at her and he says, I got to have her. She's stunning, she's beautiful, she's hot. And so what he does is he gives you federal grants for your business, whatever that is, so that he can take your sister into his home and he can hook up with her. Okay? Now, let me finish the thing. Drop down to verse 17. "But the Lord inflicted serious diseases on Pharaoh and his household because of Abram's wife Sarai. So Pharaoh summoned Abram. 'What have you done to me?' he said. 'Why didn't you tell me she was your wife? Why did you say she is my sister so that I took her to be my wife? Now then, here is your wife. Take her and go. Then Pharaoh gave orders about Abram to his men, and they sent him on his way with his wife and everything he had. So God intervened. He said, I created this marital bond. I don't want it to be messed up. God intervened, and he stepped in, and he revealed to Pharaoh that, hey, this is not our sister. This is her wife. And Pharaoh, who was not a follower of God, did not know God, Jehovah, the God who called Abraham out, said, hey, this is your wife. I can't touch her. In other words, throughout the 2022 years of biblical history, at that point, marriage was viewed as more important than a person's life. I can take your life and kill you, but I can't mess with the marital bond. That's how strong the marital bond was. And it's not just people who knew God that knew this, because Abram said, hey, when we go down there, there's going to be people there in Egypt, they don't worship Jehovah, but they also viewed the marital bond and said, I can't touch that. So Pharaoh, who at the time was the ruler of the strongest and most powerful nation on the planet at that time, who could have just said, yes, I can take her, said, wow, that's your wife? I have to back off because that bond is so strong, I can't touch it. I can't mess with it. And that was the world. It wasn't just a biblical view or the people that follow God. It was a world view. That marriage was meant to be so strong and so precious that the only way that I can break that marital bond is I have to go kill you